When our power-hungry homeowners association leader unlawfully hauled away my bike, she didn't realize she was messing with the head of Yamaha, triggering a series of events that would uncover years of local wrongdoing. What would you do if you discovered your HOA president was illegally pocketing thousands in towing fees from your fellow residents? Welcome to my channel. Let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from. The instant I arrived home after 3 weeks of confidential discussions regarding my new position as CEO, I sensed something was amiss. The sky was ablaze with a sunset, but it wasn't the colors that grabbed my attention. It was the equally vibrant yellow sheet of paper stuck to my garage. My heart plummeted as I neared. This had to be Karen Whitmore's handiwork. I'd only encountered our HOA president twice since relocating 6 months prior, but those encounters were sufficient to understand she governed our area like her private domain. The first time, she'd scolded me about my lawn being a half-inch too long. The second, she'd dispatched her spouse to meticulously measure the space between my mailbox and the sidewalk. Retrieving the notice, my hands trembled with anger. Violation: unauthorized vehicle storage, remove motorcycle within 48 hours or face immediate towing and fines. Below, in Karen's flawless penmanship, motorcycles diminish property values and draw undesirable individuals to our community. I glanced at my immaculate 2023 Yamaha Road Cruiser, which was worth more than Karen's high-end car. I'd devoted countless weekends to meticulously cleaning and polishing it in my driveway, even instructing neighborhood youngsters in motorcycle upkeep. Old Mr. Johnson from next door often brought his grandson by to marvel at it. Just then, Karen power-walked past my residence in her expensive workout attire, her impeccably coiffed brown hair unruffled. She didn't offer a greeting or pause, merely cast a meaningful glance at my bike and tapped her $500 smartwatch. The implication was evident. Time was of the essence. I contemplated pursuing her to clarify that I wasn't just any motorcycle owner. I was poised to be named the new CEO of Yamaha. The official announcement was slated for the following week, yet a gut feeling urged me to remain patient and meticulously record everything. I retrieved my phone and began capturing images of my bike, the notice, and the pristine state of my home. As I photographed the citation, my other neighbor, Bob Miller, emerged to irrigate his lawn. He was Karen's loyal supporter on the HOA board, invariably endorsing her preposterous regulations. "Pity about that bike," he remarked, his tone lacking genuine remorse. "Rules are rules." I observed his new tow truck parked in his driveway. The emblem, Miller's Towing, freshly emblazoned on its side. That's when it dawned on me. This wasn't merely about property values or community aesthetics. Something more sinister was afoot. Inside, I accessed my HOA documents on my laptop. 3 hours and 2 coffees later, I still couldn't locate any provision explicitly prohibiting motorcycles. However, I did unearth something intriguing. Every vehicle towed in the preceding year had been handled by Miller's Towing, and the charges appeared exorbitant. My phone vibrated with another HOA email. "Emergency board meeting tomorrow. Vehicle policy updates." The timing was too convenient to be mere chance. As I observed the sunset through my window, I spied Karen and Bob conversing in her driveway, both casting glances toward my garage. I shut my laptop and grinned. They had no inkling of whom they were antagonizing, but they were about to discover. Sometimes, the gravest errors stem from misjudging individuals, or in this instance, a CEO by his motorcycle. I had 48 hours to thwart them, and a strategy was already crystallizing. The morning sun hadn't fully risen when my security camera's notification roused me. Through my bedroom window, I shockingly witnessed a blue tow truck reversing into my driveway. My heart pounded as I hastily dressed and dashed downstairs. But by the time I reached outside, my cherished Yamaha was already secured and being hauled away. The truck's logo, Miller's Towing, was discernible in the faint light. I leaped into my car to give chase, but the truck vanished around a bend. My phone vibrated with a message from Karen. HOA regulations. Unauthorized vehicles have been removed. Office hours at 9 a.m. It was barely 6 a.m. She'd orchestrated this. At precisely 9 a.m., I entered the HOA office, striving to maintain composure. Karen sat enthroned behind her desk, adorned in her customary pearl necklace, and a smirk that infuriated me. Bob Miller, my neighbor from 3 doors down, sprawled in a corner chair, fiddling with his tow truck keys. "Mr. Z's," Karen uttered, not even glancing up from her computer. "I have your documentation here." She slid a folder across. Inside was a copy of some nonsensical regulation concerning recreational vehicles that I'd never encountered, highlighted in neon yellow. "This is outrageous," I declared, my voice steady. "That bike exceeds your yearly income. You can't simply confiscate it." Karen finally looked up, adjusting her stylish spectacles. "Actually, we can. Article 7, Section 12 explicitly prohibits the storage of recreational vehicles in driveways. You received a notice you posted while I was away on business," I retorted. Bob chuckled from his corner. "Rules are rules," Karen stated. Her voice saturated with feigned amiability. "We prioritize property values here. Some of us cannot afford to reside in areas overrun with motorcycles." She spat, the word motorcycles sounding like profanity. What she failed to grasp was that I'd just been appointed CEO of Yamaha. The news wouldn't be publicized for another week. Some final board paperwork was still pending. I could have revealed it then, observed her expression transform, but something compelled me to delay. "Where's my bike?" I inquired instead. "Safely at Miller's impound," Bob interjected. "Standard retrieval fee, $500, cash only." He grinned, displaying teeth as immaculate as Karen's pearls. I retrieved my phone and began photographing the documents. Karen's smile wavered. "Photography is prohibited in the office," she snapped. "Intriguing rule," I remarked. "Is that documented somewhere as well?" As I exited, I overheard their whispers. Glancing back through the glass door, I witnessed Bob slipping something into Karen's desk drawer. That's when I spotted the security camera in their office's corner. I suspected those recordings might contain revealing dialogues. In my car, I scrutinized the paperwork. The HOA rule they cited had a revision date from the previous month. Peculiar timing. Even more peculiar, the tow company's address corresponded to a property Bob Miller had acquired last year, shortly after becoming Karen's special advisor for community enforcement. My phone vibrated again. Another text from Karen. "Impound fees increase by $100 daily. Better hurry." I grinned, contemplating the press conference scheduled for the following week. Sometimes the most satisfying retribution involves allowing individuals to self-destruct. I merely needed to observe Karen and Bob delve deeper. Sleep eluded me that night, preoccupied with my absent bike. At 3 a.m., I began delving into the HOA website. Something about that bylaw Karen referenced felt amiss. 20 minutes and 4 coffees later, I unearthed my quarry. A comprehensive history of our HOA regulations spanning 15 years. My hands began trembling upon discovering it. The motorcycle regulation Karen invoked had never been formally ratified by the board. She had simply appended it to the website 3 months prior, immediately after Tom Peterson's towing company secured the HOA contract. Speaking of Bob, I recalled an anomaly regarding his company's name. Miller's Superior Towing Service, LLC. I accessed the State Business Registry website. Bob's company had been registered a mere 4 months earlier. Even more bizarrely, It shared an address with Karen's personal real estate office. I delved further, retrieving every HOA financial record accessible. In the past 3 months, Miller's Towing had been compensated $47,000 for community services, a considerable sum for towing in our modest neighborhood. My neighbor, Lisa Wu, who is employed at the county clerk's office, had mentioned that HOA records were public domain. At 8 a.m. sharp, I was stationed outside her office. Her assistance yielded jaw-dropping revelations. Karen had altered our HOA's banking arrangements 6 months prior, transferring all accounts to a small bank where, surprise, Bob Miller served on the board of directors. But the true bombshell arrived when Lisa retrieved property records. Bob Miller not only owned the towing enterprise, his wife owned the storage facility where the towed vehicles were housed, and the pièce de résistance. They were imposing storage fees triple the legal limit under state law. I paused for a breath of fresh air, and that's when I spotted them. Karen and Bob, lunching at the cafe opposite the clerk's office. They were laughing, likely believing they had bested me. Karen brandished a sheet of paper resembling another violation notice. Through the window, I observed Bob jotting something in a small notebook. Back in the clerk's office, I located one final document that solidified everything. Karen had disseminated a notice the previous week, announcing a new community improvement fee for all homeowners, ostensibly to fund enhanced security. The amount precisely corresponded to the inflated storage fees from Bob's company. I meticulously gathered all the documents, ensuring Lisa certified each copy. As I approached my car, I espied a familiar tow truck passing by, one of Bob's. The driver didn't recognize me, but I recognized him. It was Karen's son, whom she claimed was away at college. I snapped a swift photograph with my phone. That evening, I sat in my home office, amidst a sea of papers and sticky notes connecting the dots. My phone vibrated. A text from Karen. "Hope you're not too upset about the bike. Just following the rules." Little did she know I had just completed scanning all my evidence and transmitting it to my legal team at Yamaha. The real query was, how would she appear in orange, as prison jumpsuits might be imminent? My hands were unwavering as I signed the certified letter, disclosing my identity as Yamaha's CEO. The timing wasn't ideal. We hadn't yet publicly announced my position, but Karen's unlawful towing operation had compelled my hand. I'd spent the weekend compiling accounts from other neighbors who'd lost vehicles to Miller's Towing. The Smiths lost their classic Ford. The Jones' restored Triumph motorcycle vanished during their vacation. Even old Mrs. Lee's grandson had his first car towed during a family gathering. Each narrative further fueled my ire, but I maintained my composure. That's when my assistant, Maria, rushed into my home office with urgent news. Karen was intending to auction off all the abandoned vehicles this weekend. My bike would be sold to the highest bidder unless I remitted thousands in fabricated fees. She'd dispatched the notice to my former business address, likely anticipating I wouldn't receive it promptly. I retrieved my phone and dialed Ray Johnson, president of the State Motorcycle Rights Alliance. "Ray, remember when I assisted in combating that unjust helmet law last year? I require a favor." Within an hour, my inbox was inundated with messages from motorcycle clubs statewide. They were incensed by the HOA's discriminatory policies targeting bikes. Karen's response to my letter arrived sooner than anticipated. A uniformed courier delivered an envelope containing a bill for $4,500 in towing and storage fees, accompanied by a note in her impeccable cursive. "Rules are rules, Mr. Z's. Payment required within 24 hours or the vehicle will be deemed abandoned." That's when I noticed an anomaly on the bill. The letterhead matched other documents I'd seen from Miller's Towing, but the bank account number differed. A swift search revealed it belonged to an LLC registered to Karen's husband. They weren't merely towing vehicles. They were operating a full-blown racket. I remained awake late into the night, constructing a case. Property records indicated Karen had acquired 3 residences in our neighborhood at significantly below-market rates, all from families whose vehicles had been towed. The Jones had relocated after the towing fees bankrupted them. The pattern was unmistakable. Target, harass, collect fees, compel sales. At midnight, my doorbell chimed. It was Kevin Lee, Mrs. Lee's grandson. "Mr. Z's, I'm employed at the courthouse records department. You need to see this." He proffered a stack of papers documenting dozens of vehicle auctions, all executed without proper notification or authorization. Karen and Bob hadn't merely seized my bike. They'd pilfered millions in property from our neighbors over the years. I picked up my phone again, this time contacting Jane Smith, our local news investigative reporter. "Jane, remember that tip I promised you regarding corruption in local housing? It's time." I also dispatched emails to every HOA board member, excluding Karen and Bob, attaching evidence of their malfeasance. The tempest was about to erupt, but first, I had a rally to orchestrate. Just before dawn, I received an anonymous text. "Auction moved up. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. They were attempting to sell my bike before I could intervene, but as I observed the sunrise over our tranquil streets, I grinned. Karen had no inkling of what awaited. The distant rumble of engines signaled that the cavalry was en route. Saturday morning dawned crisp and clear. As I sipped my coffee on the front porch, the tranquility was fleeting. At precisely 8 a.m., the distant rumble of motorcycles shattered the suburban calm. Karen was already outdoors in her pink bathrobe, irrigating her prized roses, when the first contingent of riders turned onto our street. They arrived in waves, cruisers, sport bikes, vintage models, all impeccably maintained. The Veterans Motorcycle Club spearheaded the procession, followed by the Women of Chrome, the Classic Riders Association, and dozens more groups. Each rider donned a bright yellow vest emblazoned with Anti-Discrimination Rally. I'd ensured every bike adhered to noise regulations and was street legal. Karen's garden hose plummeted to the ground as she beheld hundreds of motorcycles occupying every legal parking space on our streets. Her flawlessly styled hair remained in curlers as she frantically dialed her phone. "Bob! Bob, get over here immediately!" she shrieked. But Bob Miller was preoccupied, contending with the news van that had just parked in front of his towing company. I approached Karen, maintaining a calm and professional demeanor. "Lovely morning for a community gathering, wouldn't you agree?" I inquired, proffering a thick envelope. Inside was a cease and desist letter from my legal team, along with photographs of every unlawful tow her associate, Bob, had executed in the preceding year. "You can't do this," she sputtered, mascara streaking her face. "This is a tranquil neighborhood. We have regulations." Just then, Mrs. Lee from across the street approached with a tray of baked goods. "Actually, Karen, we scrutinized the bylaws. There's no prohibition against organized community events." Behind her, the Rodriguez family was erecting a lemonade stand for the riders. Even old Mr. Johnson, who typically grumbled about everything, was in his garage, showcasing his restored 1950 Yamaha to an enthralled group of riders. Karen's face flushed crimson as she witnessed more neighbors emerging to join the rally. The Williams children were receiving motorcycle safety instruction in the cul-de-sac from certified instructors I'd engaged. The Patels were photographing each bike for their son's school project on diverse engine types. "I'm contacting law enforcement," Karen menaced, her hand trembling as she dialed 911. I grinned and gestured to where Officer Rivera was already parked. He waved back, accepting a cookie from Mrs. Chen. "Already addressed," I stated. "We possess all the requisite permits. And speaking of law enforcement, they're exceedingly intrigued by those kickbacks you've been receiving from Bob's towing company." The color drained from Karen's face as she observed another vehicle approaching. a forensic accountant from the district attorney's office. She'd brought boxes of HOA financial records I'd subpoenaed the previous week. "This isn't over," Karen hissed, turning to storm back into her residence. But she halted abruptly upon seeing what was parked in my driveway. My original Yamaha, returned and meticulously detailed, with a prominent sign reading, "Protected by the U.S. Constitution and the CEO of Yamaha." As Karen slammed her door, the sound was eclipsed by hundreds of riders revving their engines in perfect synchronicity. Mrs. Chen handed me a cookie and smiled. "Best Saturday morning ever," she declared. I couldn't help but concur, as I witnessed our neighborhood metamorphose from a locale of apprehension into a genuine community. The morning commenced with a solitary news van arriving to cover our motorcycle rally. By noon, 5 distinct television stations were stationed outside our community gates. I observed Karen pacing in her front yard, phone pressed to her ear as the first reporter approached me with a microphone. "Mr. Z's, could you elaborate on the HOA's towing practices?" the reporter inquired. I grinned, reached into my briefcase, and retrieved a thick blue folder our forensic accountant had compiled. "I believe these documents will pique your interest more than my motorcycle," I stated, opening to the initial page. "For the past 3 years, Miller's Towing has removed 68 vehicles from our neighborhood. Curiously, every single one of those tows transpired within 24 hours of residents questioning HOA fees." The reporter's eyes widened as she perused bank statements revealing dubious transfers between the HOA account and an offshore entity. Bob Miller, who'd been lurking behind his curtains, suddenly burst out of his house. "You can't substantiate anything," he bellowed. But his countenance paled when I produced additional documentation. "Actually, we can," I asserted calmly, displaying a series of checks to the camera. "Each time a car was towed, half the fee was remitted to a company called Urban Solutions. Guess who owns that company? Karen Whitmore and Bob Miller." More neighbors began emerging outdoors, drawn by the commotion. Mrs. Chen from number 42 stepped forward, tears welling in her eyes. "They towed my son's car on Christmas Eve," she divulged into the microphone. "We had to remit $400 to retrieve it." That unleashed the floodgates. One by one, neighbors recounted their ordeals. The Martinez family lost their work van. The Patels had their daughter's first car towed during her college graduation party. Each story perfectly aligned with a corresponding payment detailed in our comprehensive financial documents. Karen finally emerged from her house, large designer sunglasses attempting to conceal her eyes. "This is all a big misunderstanding," she announced, striving to project an air of confidence that was rapidly crumbling. "As HOA president, I have a solemn duty to uphold and maintain property values." "By stealing from your own neighbors?" I interjected, my voice amplified enough for the assembled crowd and the ever-present cameras to clearly hear. I held up a final, damning document, a meticulously compiled list of property sales within our community. It's incredibly interesting how many homes were sold at significantly below market rates after their owners were burdened with exorbitant towing fees they couldn't possibly afford. And even more interesting, I continued, emphasizing each word, how many of those very same homes were subsequently purchased by shell companies, all with direct financial ties to you and Bob. The crowd, previously a murmur of discontent, fell into a stunned, disbelieving silence. Karen's sunglasses, though large, couldn't hide the beads of sweat trickling down her forehead, a stark contrast to her usually impeccable appearance. Bob, realizing the gravity of the situation, had retreated back into his house, effectively abandoning Karen to face the consequences alone. But I wasn't finished yet. There was one more crucial piece of evidence to reveal. "I have one final item to share," I announced, my voice resonating with authority. I pulled out my phone, displaying on its screen a security video captured from my own garage. The video clearly showed Karen Whitmore herself, personally directing the tow truck operator to my motorcycle at the ungodly hour of 6 a.m. The timestamp, prominently displayed, irrefutably proved that the tow occurred before the stipulated 48-hour notice period had even remotely expired. This was the final nail in the coffin, the irrefutable proof of her blatant disregard for the rules she so vehemently claimed to enforce. As the cameras rolled, capturing the unfolding drama, and neighbors watched with a mixture of shock and vindication, Karen finally, irrevocably, broke. "Fine," she shrieked, her voice cracking with a mixture of rage and defeat. "You people deserve it, with your tacky cars and motorcycles ruining our prestigious community." Her carefully constructed facade of control had completely shattered, revealing the bitter, prejudiced person beneath. Almost as if on cue, a police car, its lights silently flashing, pulled up discreetly behind the cluster of news vans. 2 officers stepped out, holding official-looking papers. I recognized them instantly. They weren't just any officers, but active members of the motorcycle club who had enthusiastically joined our rally earlier that morning, blending in seamlessly with the other riders. As they approached Karen, not with hostility, but with the calm, firm demeanor of law enforcement carrying out their duty, holding search warrants, I turned back to face the assembled cameras and the now rapt audience. "This isn't solely about a motorcycle anymore," I declared, my voice filled with conviction. "It's about standing up, unequivocally, to those individuals who shamelessly abuse their positions of power for personal gain. And more importantly, it's about the power of a community, uniting, supporting each other, and reclaiming what is rightfully theirs." Behind me, I could see the tangible evidence of this transformation. Neighbors who had previously been divided by fear and suspicion were now embracing, sharing their stories, offering comfort and solidarity. Years of simmering resentment and distrust were visibly melting away, replaced by a burgeoning sense of unity and shared purpose as Karen's meticulously constructed house of cards finally, and spectacularly, collapsed around her. The morning of the emergency HOA meeting, I discovered a plain, brown envelope discreetly placed on my doorstep. Inside, I found a collection of incriminating photographs. Karen and Bob, engaged in their clandestine monthly dinners with the owners of the towing company. Accompanying the photos were detailed receipts, irrefutably demonstrating that they had been illegally selling impounded vehicles without providing any proper notice or adhering to due process. My neighbor, young Jimmy, who had been working at Miller's Towing, had finally summoned the courage to expose the entire corrupt operation, risking his own job to do what was right. The community center, usually sparsely attended for HOA meetings, was packed to overflowing. People were standing in the hallways, craning their necks to see, some even peering through the windows, desperate to witness the unfolding events. As I walked to the front of the room, Karen, in a desperate attempt to maintain some semblance of control, attempted to initiate her usual monotonous meeting routine. But this time, things were profoundly different. I held up my phone, displaying for everyone to see the security video of my motorcycle being unlawfully towed. "Before we commence," I stated calmly, my voice cutting through the expectant silence, "I believe it's imperative that we address the concerning matter of where all our towing fees have actually been going." Karen's face turned a shade of crimson as I projected the incriminating dinner photos onto the large screen at the front of the room. Bob, ever the loyal sidekick, leapt to his feet, shouting about privacy violations and illegal surveillance. But his protests were drowned out by the rising tide of outrage from the assembled community members. Nobody was listening to him anymore. His credibility, along with Karen's, was in tatters. One by one, neighbors bravely stood up to share their personal stories of injustice and financial hardship at the hands of Karen and Bob's predatory scheme. Mrs. Garcia's son's bicycle inexplicably vanished. Mr. Thompson's meticulously restored classic Mustang mysteriously towed. Even old Mrs. Lee's gardening equipment, inexplicably deemed unauthorized and confiscated, all mysteriously towed and subsequently sold without any warning or legal justification. Then came the grand finale, the culmination of weeks of painstaking investigation. Our forensic accountant, Mr. Roberts, a man of impeccable integrity, entered the room carrying 3 large boxes overflowing with meticulously organized documents. "Over the past 5 years," he announced, his voice clear and unwavering, "Karen Whitmore and Bob Miller have collectively amassed over $200,000 in unauthorized and illegally obtained fees from the residents of this very neighborhood." The room erupted in a cacophony of angry shouts and calls for justice. Karen, seeing her meticulously crafted empire crumbling around her, attempted to make a hasty escape, grabbing her designer handbag and heading for the door. But her attempt was futile. 2 police officers were already waiting patiently at the exit, ready to take her into custody. I raised my hand, calling for quiet, and the room gradually fell silent, all eyes fixed on me. "As your neighbor," I began, my voice filled with a sense of purpose and determination, "and as the CEO of Yamaha, I have a distinctly different vision for the future of our community." The room was hushed, expectant. I then unveiled detailed plans for a comprehensive new community program: free motorcycle safety courses for all residents, a scholarship fund dedicated to supporting young, aspiring mechanics, and a monthly neighborhood bike show designed to foster a sense of camaraderie and shared passion, bringing everyone together in a positive and constructive way. "This neighborhood doesn't require oppressive rules, backroom deals, and a climate of fear and intimidation," I declared, my voice resonating with conviction. "What it truly needs is a strong sense of community, mutual respect, and shared opportunity." The vote to remove Karen and Bob from their positions of power was swift and unanimous. As they were escorted out of the community center, their reign of terror finally over, I observed something truly remarkable and unexpected. People were smiling, genuinely engaging with neighbors they'd never spoken to before, forging connections that had been suppressed for far too long. Mrs. Lee, known for her beautiful garden, enthusiastically offered to teach gardening classes. Mr. Thompson, the proud owner of the restored Mustang, volunteered his garage for basic car maintenance workshops. The Garcia children, energized by the newfound sense of community spirit, began organizing a bicycle repair club. Today, our neighborhood bears little resemblance to its former self. The community center parking lot, once a symbol of Karen's oppressive rule, now hosts vibrant motorcycle safety courses every weekend. Local children, eager to learn, are taught about engines and mechanics in our newly established workshop program. Even some of the former HOA board members, once staunch supporters of Karen's regime, have now embraced the motorcycle culture, their bikes parked proudly and legally in their driveways. Last week, I received a letter from Karen's new neighborhood, located across town. She was, predictably, complaining about excessive motorcycle noise and soliciting support for her cause. I responded by sending her a Yamaha catalog, highlighting the latest models with a simple, handwritten note enclosed. "Bikes still available. Employee discount applies. CEO." Sometimes the most effective form of revenge isn't about seeking retribution. It's about constructing something positive, something enduring, something better, from the wreckage of what your adversaries attempted to destroy. 6 months after Karen's ignominious departure, I received an unexpected email that made my morning coffee taste even sweeter. A homeowners association from a neighboring town reached out, having heard about our community's inspiring story of resilience and triumph. Their HOA president, another Karen-esque figure named Brenda, had been employing similar unethical tactics with a different towing company, preying on vulnerable residents. They were seeking my guidance and assistance in combating this injustice. I invited them to our newly renovated community center, where the walls were now adorned with photographs showcasing our neighborhood's remarkable transformation, a testament to the power of collective action. The room was packed as I recounted our story, sharing the strategies we employed and the lessons we learned. But the real surprise came when Bob Miller's son, his eyes filled with a mixture of remorse and determination, stepped forward. He revealed a folder brimming with documents, meticulously detailing how his father and Karen had been orchestrating similar, fraudulent schemes in 3 other unsuspecting neighborhoods, expanding their web of corruption far beyond our community. The following day, I convened an emergency meeting of Yamaha's board of directors. We unanimously decided to launch the Ride Free Live Fair initiative, establishing a nationwide legal defense fund specifically designed to assist homeowners facing harassment and unjust practices from overzealous HOAs. Our neighborhood, the epicenter of this transformative movement, became the pilot program, with our revitalized community center serving as the initiative's national headquarters. But the biggest shock, the most ironic twist of fate, came when we discovered that Karen hadn't actually relocated to a different town. She had merely shifted her base of operations to a retirement community in Florida, attempting to replicate her predatory scheme on a new, unsuspecting population. However, a resident there, a retired judge named William, recognized her from our viral news story and promptly reached out to us. Within days, our dedicated legal team was collaborating with them, meticulously building a strong and irrefutable case against Karen, ensuring that her reign of terror would finally, and definitively, come to an end. I had the distinct pleasure of personally delivering this news to our community during our inaugural and annual Neighborhood Unity Ride, a celebration of our collective triumph. Seeing hundreds of residents, ranging from children on bicycles to grandparents on trikes, joyfully parading through the very streets that Karen had once ruled with fear and intimidation, it felt as though everything had come full circle, a testament to the enduring power of community and justice. The old, dilapidated storage shed, where Karen used to hold her secretive and often illicit HOA meetings, had been completely transformed. It was now a vibrant, free motorcycle maintenance workshop, catering to local youth. Every Saturday, I teach alongside former gang members who have since become certified Yamaha mechanics, demonstrating to the kids that there's more than one path to becoming a valued and contributing member of a community. Last week, I received a call from a major national news network, expressing their interest in producing a feature story about how one unjustly towed motorcycle ignited a nationwide movement against HOA abuse and overreach. As I hung up the phone, I noticed a familiar tow truck driving slowly past my house. But this time it bore a different logo, a symbol of hope and positive change. Community First Towing, protecting neighborhoods, not profits. Gazing at my Yamaha, gleaming brightly in the driveway, I couldn't help but smile. Karen's illegal towing scheme hadn't just taken my bike, it had fundamentally shifted my entire perspective on the true meaning of leadership and community. Sometimes, the most profound and lasting changes originate from the smallest of injustices. And the most rewarding form of revenge isn't about getting even. It's about ensuring that nobody else has to endure the same ordeal, about building a better, fairer, and more just future for everyone. The information provided in this story is intended for informational and entertainment purposes only, and it's crucial to remember that HOA rules and regulations, as well as applicable laws, can vary significantly depending on the specific state and individual community.